Good morning, everyone. This is the March 2023 meeting of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force and the Law and Justice Council. I'll be joined shortly by my co-chair, Jack Hovenier. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. I'll call the meeting to order and welcome Jack's presence as well. Jill, would you put the agenda back up again? And scroll just a bit. Thank you. So our first agenda item is an update and report from our communications consultants, Emily Getz of Pyramid Communications and Sakara Remu of Temple Water Consulting. And I will turn it over to whichever one of you wants to kick this off.
I think I was still muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us with you today. Can you all see the screen success of IPRTF messaging?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what Emily and I wanted to provide for you today is sort of a high-level overview of the work that we've done together so far, sort of a phase one as we prepare to move into working with you hopefully for the rest of the year. We'll have time at the end for some questions and discussion, and also want to hear some ideas from you and thoughts from you all on what some of our focus will be to come. So we started this work with, in one sense, a blank slate for communications, but in another sense, a wealth of information from the work that you all have been doing, all of which is available online, of the various reports and previous communications that you all have had about the work of the IPRTF. And so we have worked together to create messaging that is rooted in best practices, is compelling and easy for the reader to engage with. And we've used these components to launch and test messaging, which we'll talk about in more detail, for specific aspects of the critical work that you all are doing. So we've come out of this work with overarching messaging that will be used going forward, a messaging framework, and key initiatives and priorities, which we will expand upon. We also did a great deal of work in branding the work of the task force, so that as we are launching you on channels, folks can recognize you when they see you. And so on the screen, you see one example of the task force's new logo, which there are, I think, about 6 different variations of, depending on what it is that you're producing. And below that is an example of a graphic for a social media post, a meeting announcement. And we have, I think, probably 25 different variations of looks for social media and other platforms, email, etc. We work together to really start building out audience development and communications channels. Identify new channels and platforms such as social media. You all have a new Facebook page now to grow the audience, diversify your resources, and strengthen the existing efforts of what you're doing. So we have worked to revise the existing content of the IPRTF so it's a bit more accessible, adjusted the navigation menu, created new pages with your staff and Jill and some folks that work very far behind the scenes on the website. Launched the Facebook page, created graphics, as I mentioned, update and populate the various pages that are tied to the IPRTF's work to make sure there's a subscribed option to be able to get in contact with folks and share information. And we've curated a list of local and regional journalists to include on email blasts so that it becomes normal for them to be learning about and seeing the IPRTF. And then I will pause here. I think Emily.
We also, as Sakara mentioned, did some message testing on Instagram and Facebook using some paid digital advertising. So this took place between February 24th and March 10th. And there were two things that we worked to do, either in terms of actions, drive people to the task force webpage to learn more, or encourage people to like the newly created task force Facebook page so that we could gather an audience for you all there. But in an overarching sense, in addition to these two actions, the purpose of paid advertising was really to test the resonance of messaging. In terms of overarching results, ads reached just over 34,000 people living in Whatcom County. Ads were seen almost 200,000 times. And so on average, each person that saw an ad saw it 5 times. So this is, we really work for reputation here because we know it takes people more than one time to see something to maybe read it or resonate with it and have it become something that's memorable. So that was really positive. We felt we saw 245 people liking the new Facebook page, so very quickly growing audience there that we can continue to reach and engage over time. And more than 1,000 people visited the IPRTF webpage by clicking through from an ad. So in terms of message testing, there were 2 levels that we were testing messages. The first was testing essentially 2 tagline options. So at the highest level, these were 2 of the ideas we had developed with you all for how we describe the task force's work. So the first option was transforming criminal, legal, and behavioral health systems in Whatcom County. And the second was transforming criminal justice and public safety in Whatcom County. So both taglines performed well, but variation A drove more results at a lower cost, indicating that this is the tagline that resonates more strongly with IPRTF audiences. So this would be our recommendation for a tagline moving forward in your work. And then the second level of message testing was a slightly longer message. The first was leading with a compelling statistic. You can see it as variation A up there. And the second was leading with a description of the task force. And for these, there was really no conclusive winner for the test. Variation A performed slightly better, but not to a statistically significant degree. So this tells us that really both copy variations are working well for IPRTF communications.
And then just last week, we had 2 op-eds published. We wanted to have one op-ed that was focused, that was a local publication to Whatcom County, and then a publication that also is more widely read across the state. And so we have seen both the Bellingham Herald put an op-ed online, and I understand in print as well over the weekend. And you can see a little bit of information about their readership there, which is a fantastic result. The Seattle Times, I believe also went online on Friday and was published in print over the weekend. When I checked in on Friday, there seemed to be some healthy comments. I haven't looked since Friday, but there were some healthy comments and folks engaging with each other about what does this article cover and what some really great ideas for, you know, what could be covered in the future. But as of Friday, nothing that was, you know, overtly negative or not understanding what it was that the op-ed was trying to convey, which I thought was great. And so as we move into looking at our work for the rest of the year, we're looking at expanding to more of a countywide public education and awareness campaign. And so, you know, it's our intention to continue to work together to expand messaging developed to cover more topics and expand everything really, social media channels, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But we also are learning and understanding the significance and timeliness of the Justice Project implementation plan and the work that is being done around that.
Anything else from you two before we open it up for questions or comments?
Stephen, this is Jill here. I'm wondering if Sakara was
Oh,
froze.
yes.
Yeah, I
It
think so.
does look that way.
Emily, I have and can screen share her presentation. Do you want to finish it out?
Sure. Yep. Happy to do
Okay.
that. Maybe she'll jump back in.
Give me 1 minute to stop her share. Hang on.
Thank you, Jill.
Okay, can you see this?
Yes. Excellent. So as Sakara was saying, there are essentially 3 things that we will be working to do through this continuing effort. The first is proactively developing public information and outreach. The second is responding to community feedback about implementation planning efforts. As we get more and more active with communications, we will see more and more response. And so we'll be providing some additional capacity building support in monitoring and responding to community engagement and engaging the public and informed dialogue with the task force. So this is meant to give a sense of the overall timeline for the work moving forward. We're seeing this take place in essentially 3 phases. So in phase 1 that we see as March and April, we'll be working with the task force on expanded messaging development, building from what we've created to date. We will be developing a robust communications calendar that will lay out strategically what we'll be talking about and when, and that will move through the conclusion of the year. Be working to expand social media and paid media presence. In May through July, we see this time period as really focused around a very active launch and management of campaign efforts across platforms. And so we'll be providing real-time strategy and assets for that community responsive communications that we talked about, both proactively communicating and responding. And then through August through December, we'll be continuing to manage those communications campaign efforts across platforms. We'll be spending less time on paid advertising and moving back into needs assessment and training for the task force for communications management and capacity building moving forward. And that's it. So happy to answer any questions. Oh, it looks like maybe Sakara is back. But happy to answer any questions and or respond to anything that's coming up for anyone.
Welcome back, Sakara.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Sheriff Elfo, please.
Yes, first, thank you for all you do. It's much appreciated and much needed. I just had one question about how these posts, who reviews these before they go out, because I think there was some information that was very preliminarily put out, was published, and it didn't provide a context that could have been interpreted as misleading. So I'm sure, I know that wasn't intentional, but I just wonder what steps were taken to avert that in the future, or have some type of filtering process.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sheriff. Thank you. That was a wonderful learning opportunity, and we had some great meetings with some folks from public health around that as well. And I think it's just about, and something that we've been talking about with the task force's leadership, is making sure we have more eyes on messaging to approve them before they are posted. But there is an extensive back and forth process of drafting the copy for the post, sending it to leadership and staff to review. I believe attorneys at the county also put eyes on things as well.
Thank you so much. That's reassuring.
Other questions for Sakara or Emily? Perry.
Thanks, Stephen. Perry Meyer, Response Systems Division, Health and Community Services. I was just curious about your experience in terms of the likes compared to the number of individuals that had actually viewed the page. I don't have a context for that, so I wasn't really sure of what we're hoping for, what's kind of typical in terms of a percentage of, those that viewed and the likes. That'd be helpful. Thanks.
Emily, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Perry, but I think what you're speaking to is the difference between impressions, the number of people that saw ads, and the number of people that actually clicked through to like the page. Did I understand that correctly? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that we think it's a really healthy response. It's frequently we see conversion rates from someone saw something to someone took action, especially in an initial run like this, of like less than 10%. And so one of the stats that we're really happy to see is our paid advertising spend was really modest. And so it reached a very focused, you saw just over 30,000, a really focused audience. One of the things that we were happiest to see is that the number of times we reached those folks was about 5. So I think the number of page likes we were really happy with for our first run. And I think what we want to do is really keep up that repetition and the number of times that folks are seeing something, knowing that, maybe it's on the 3rd view, maybe it's on the 7th view that someone becomes willing to take that next step of clicking through to take an action.
Thanks,
The only other
Emily.
thing, the only other thing that I would add to that is just to remind folks that the paid advertising test only ran through February 24th to March 10th. So that's a really short window to get that level of response and action from people. That's one of the reasons why we are really jazzed about the result. And we also split split the cost to focus on Facebook page likes versus people clicking through to the website. And we would certainly probably adjust that in the future as well. So just that context for folks.
I'll just add, and Emily and Sakara, correct me if I'm wrong, that you will be tracking usage on our social media. And so there will be, I assume, periodic reports that can update that public response. Arlene.
Yes, I have a question. Many times I see discussions on Facebook about the subjects that we're dealing with, and the discussions are filled with lack of information and poor information and wrong information. So as far as this task force is concerned, do you want us to respond in any way? Do you want us to refer people to the Facebook site? What do you want us to do?
That's a great question and something that we've been talking with the leadership about. And I think that for the rest of this month and, you know, the first half of April, we'll be working with you all to kind of categorize what those things are that are out there and figure out what is kind of the policy and practice for responding or, you know, interjecting a comment with a link to additional accurate information. So kind of to be determined, but something that's absolutely on our radar and we're actively working on. Emily, did you want to add anything on that?
Maybe just that one of the things that we're talking about in the categories that Sakara mentioned are, you know, who are the folks that are really interested in understanding that we do want to engage more deeply and where we can be successful in engaging folks more deeply, and where are the folks that are going to be there commenting and trolling, as we call it, no matter what, and where we don't want to actually just add fuel to the fire and elevate misinformation that's, you know, maybe intentionally or unintentionally being put forward.
Eric?
There we go. All right, thank you. So Boyce, Sakara, you said something in response to the sheriff's question about quality control, and you talked about attorneys at the county reviewing Facebook posts or advertisements. And I was just wondering who the attorneys were.
I don't know. That would be a question for staff. That's my understanding, and I could be completely wrong about that.
Okay.
I can answer that for you, Eric. Karen Frakes has taken a look at the initial content. Yeah.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Mayor Fleetwood?
I'm not sure why my video isn't working today. Thank you. This looks really good. I'm just curious, this is obviously going to be an assist in the effort to pass the initiative for the new jail. What's the duration of this media campaign? Is it intended to go through that? Is it continuing, or does it have a limited duration?
So we see, and I'm just pulling up my notes here of what Emily sort of covered. So May through July, we see as being a heavy communications campaign effort. August and December, it will sort of taper off and kind of get back to the business as usual. But we haven't come up with that plan yet. We're just that's kind of our broad overview and what we're thinking strategically makes sense. And we'll be under contract through the end of the year. Is that helpful?
That was my question. Yeah, when I saw the timeline extend into December, I guess I was wondering if the intent was to have it continuing.
Yeah, I think we can think of it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mayor.
That's all right. It's primarily for this year.
Yes, it's primarily for this year, and it's the both and of the Justice Project implementation plan, and then just IPRTF communications in general.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Barry?
Yeah, hey, good morning, everybody. Just to clarify, again, Eric's question about legal review. We basically have Karen on speed dial for all communications on the Justice Project and this project as well, because, you know, we know what happened last time. We want to be very careful. And as well as we go down the line for an actual ballot campaign, we have to make sure that our messaging is not campaign oriented. It has to be fact oriented, and that's kind of what this effort's about, just to get the facts out to the public. So definitely have legal around a lot, Eric, so no worries there.
And Jack?
Yeah, I wanted to comment too. Barry touched on it, but Mayor Fleetwood's question's a good one. I think, although we're aware there's been discussion about a ballot initiative, that we would be making this effort regardless. Do we anticipate there will be more public awareness because of an interest in that? Sure. And so we think it's all the more timely for the work of the task force to be disseminated to the community and for that discussion. But for the sake of those who may not know, this particular group can't have a focus on the ballot initiative or any of these things. But we do believe that getting accurate information into the community as there's a broader discussion, which we anticipate will occur, is really important. And that's one of the reasons we prioritize this.
Any other questions or comments for Sakara or Emily? Okay, well, get on your Facebook page and like the IPRTF. For now, thank you both for your work and for this update. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
care.
you so much.
Jack, you want to take the next agenda item?
Sure, I just realized I had the steering committee agenda. Let me pull the correct agenda because we're not talking about what I just had up. So I think it was Barry next. Jill, can you throw up the agenda because I have the correct agenda. I just said scroll down. Yeah, the Justice Project. So this would be an update from Barry on the Justice Project with a focus of this task force in our role as the Law and Justice Council. So Barry, that's to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Welcome, everybody, again. And the Justice Project is cooking along in its implementation phase. We've had our first two meetings. The first one was on the 9th. That was to do with systems, criminal justice systems. The one we had last Friday on the 17th was services. This week on Thursday, we start talking about facilities. We're going to be talking about facilities that are outside of the jail that could be pertinent to our discussions and our efforts. And then the week on the 30th, we'll have the second discussion on facilities, which are the in the jail facilities. And then our last workshop will be on the 6th of April, which is going to be all around funding and how the different options that we may have and how we might approach it this time on funding. So implementation phase is moving. April will be our focus group where we kind of validate some of these plans out in the community. And then we're going to have a town hall in May prior to anything coming to the council in June. So there's a lot going on. The planning team, which is Jack and I and Tyler and Stephen, are meeting weekly, sometimes twice weekly now, it seems. And we really are looking forward to the progress we're going to make. So I would also want to mention that we sent a team out to Nashville last week. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because we're kind of still debriefing on that, but we saw a lot of great best practices and saw really how great leadership can make a difference in an organization. And if anybody wants to chime in any other details, Caleb or Maya or anyone else that was there, I'd welcome you to. But we're going to be definitely meeting sometime this week to collectively put together a report on our findings back in Nashville. So that's all I had this morning. Seth, I see you got a hand up.
Apologies, Barry. I thought I lowered it.
Oh, okay. All right, everybody. Well, look forward to this process. It's ambitious, and we got a lot of great people working on this. So thanks.
Stephen, do you want me to take the amendment and you go into committees?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks, Jack.
Sorry, I got on late this morning. I had for those of you that go into Zoom and my computer both decided that they needed to do updates as I was trying to log in. So I apologize. So we had a discussion in the steering committee, and I'm thinking, Stephen, I'm looking for your input on this. It might be most appropriate, since Jill put the thing together, to explain what it is we're trying to do. My understanding today is we want to present some information that would amend or add to the current rules we operate, the task force that specifically pertain to how we will accept and integrate public comment into our meetings. I don't think there were discussions that we're talking about today beyond that. And Jill, can you clarify if that's the intent of this? I believe it is.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay. And would you like to explain it, or should we just pull it up on the screen, or what would you, or Stephen, how do you recommend? So I believe today we're just opening this up for discussion and then planning to make a decision next month, if that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
And a little bit further background is we had a couple new visitors commenting last month for the meeting, raising some questions. There was some uncertainty or some lack of clarity in our meeting procedures on whether to respond, how much to respond. And with this public communications and outreach effort that you just heard about, we're expecting more and more people to be listening in to the meetings as attendees and possibly be interested in making public comments. So we wanted to have some clarity both for us and for attendees on that element of the agenda. So Jill, go ahead.
No, I think you both described it perfectly. I'm happy to screen share the proposals if you'd like me to do that.
Sure. And then I guess there's really two parts. Under the main rules, there's just a new section called public comment. It just says we will comply with the public comment requirements. That's Jill's now showing that highlighted in the yellow that are attached as an attachment B. And the attachment B was just largely based on what a lot of other similar groups or committees are using for public comment. And I do, I guess, want to say too, certainly when we talked about this in steering and with Stephen and I, our goal is to, I mean, we're making this effort to hear from the public. We want to hear from the public. We want to get comments. We want ways for people to ask us questions. We're also mindful that people here are busy and we have to have a consistent and fair practice as to how we integrate that if we end up with, you know, a lot of people that would like to make a comment in the meeting and so forth. So this is what we've come up with. I believe it was in everybody's packet. So I think I would just open it up if there are any questions regarding clarification of what we're proposing, with the understanding we will be asking for this to be approved or approved as amended with your suggestions at the April meeting. Okay, seeing no questions or clarifying questions. And of course, you all have hard copies of it. We will bring this on the agenda at our April meeting for approval. And of course, if in the interim you find something that you need clarification or want to make a suggestion, that could be addressed in April as well. Stephen, I'm going to turn it to you for subcommittees.
Okay. So we have two updates from our committees. Barry, you're back on to report on the steering committee meeting held earlier this month.
Well, I don't think there's anything to report other than what we've already, that's as usual, other than we talked about the composition and makeup of the steering committee. And that's an ongoing discussion. You know, we're looking at how can we be more diverse? How can we be more engaged with the public, maybe with the steering committee? So those, you know, those conversations are ongoing. We talked about communications efforts, and of course we've had a briefing on that this morning, and we talked about the Justice Project. We've talked about that this morning, and we talked about the public comment issue for task force meetings. So that was really it for steering. There, it's just a duplicate of basically what we've done today.
Very well, thank you. Questions for Barry on steering committee? All right. The other significant meeting earlier this month was the joint meeting between the Behavioral Health Committee and the Legal and Justice Systems Committee. And that would be Raylene and Arlene. I don't see Dan or Mike here. So Raylene, you want to start that?
Thank you. Yeah, so we had a presentation from Robin Williams, the program manager for mental health support, discussing some of the gaps and needs, and the program is going well, but they're almost at capacity, and other options and concerns that she had. And then we also had an update from Dr. Thomas Kinlan on the True Blood decision. I believe they were asking for 16 more individuals to assist with evaluations. And I think most of the people that I'm seeing on the panel today were actually at those meetings, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But Arlene, do you have more to add to that?
I think what stood out from the discussion especially was the lack of services and the long wait times for people, which is what we've been discussing day to day, month to month, week to week. And the possibilities that some slight increases are coming, have started already, but we're still a very long way from having prompt service and the necessary beds available.
Stephen, do you think we missed anything?
No, I think you touched on a good outline summary. I'm just wondering, as you noted, Raylene, a lot of people were present for that meeting. That was gratifying to see the attendance and interest. Any questions or additional comments from task force members, if you were there or if you were not? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Jack, may I turn it back to you for other business?
Yeah, I think we have other business and public comment. The only thing I want to mention, many of you are participating in the implementation meetings, but they've been very robust, lots of great information. I would say almost universally, if you're on this task force and your time and schedule allows, these discussions regarding systems, facilities, and so forth, I just want to encourage people to come. And of course, as Barry mentioned, our next one is this Thursday, the Justice Implementation Project discussion on facilities. I believe it's at 9:30. This will be facilities other than the correction facility, but they've been, I mean, those of you here, I see a few nods. Yeah, they've been very full and important discussions. So if you can make it, great. And that's the only other business I don't know if that was other business. I just wanted to highlight it because I know not everyone here is there. And I think those of us on the task force that are attending those, yeah, see, there's a lot of information flying at those meetings, and it's helping to shape. You want to add anything to Barry? I see your camera. Barry, you want to add anything to it?
No, I just want to thank you for echoing that. It's very important that we have y'all here and on board for these meetings. And like Jack said, the attendance has been great. The enthusiasm has been great. The exchange of information has been awesome. So we're really getting a lot of good information and things filled out to go into the implementation plan. So yes, please be there on Thursdays if you can. We thank you.
Well, and reading the tea leaves, we're going to get out of here early. So I'm thinking you can take that extra hour and maybe plug it in on Thursday. Anyway, all right. With that, Jill, could you please take us public comment?
Yes, thank you. We do have a number of attendees at the meeting today. If any of you would like to speak to the task force, please virtually raise your hand now by selecting the raise hand icon. And we have one hand raised from Rupert Ayton. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
I just want to say thanks to everybody for doing this important work. I recognize it's not easy, and I recognize that there are a lot of diverse opinions out there about what's good or bad about incarceration and so on. But I do try and tune in, and I do try and learn and pay attention, and I'm getting there. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. If anyone else would like to speak, go ahead and virtually raise your hand now. Yeah, no additional hands are raised.
All right, seeing no other business and no other public comment, Stephen or Jill, is there any reason I don't announce that we're adjourned?
Go right
None that
ahead.
I see.
All right. Well, then I want to thank everyone for being here on Monday, 20th of March. We look forward to seeing you next month, and I hope many of you can make the implementation meeting and discussion of facilities this Thursday at 9:30. If for some reason you don't have an invitation, let Jill know. Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everyone.